Many have probably heard about the fact that Wesley Snipes, who owes the US government about $15 million in 2010, got 3 years and went to prison, but that was more of a final blow to his career, which at the time had already pretty much failed. Today I'd like to look back at that career and highlight some of its most exciting moments. In the cinema, Wesley Snipes hit in the mid-80s, and initially the actor made his way into Hollywood films in the second and third roles, where it was pretty difficult to notice. Only in 1989 came out films Major League and King of New York, where he got a prominent role in the second plan. The real breakthrough for Wesley was the leading role in the small movie Spike Lee Jungle Fever. The film received several nominations at the Cannes Film Festival, and although Wesley is nowhere to be noticed, his potential was appreciated. Other actors who appeared in the movie also got noticed. Samuel L. Jackson also got his first major role in the film and won the award for Best Supporting Actor. The role of Wesley Snipes could have gone to Denzel Washington, but in the 90s, many people rated Wesley's acting talent higher than Denzel's. Jungle Fever was not very successful at the box office, but spent money returned. After this work in Spike Lee's film, Snipes' career took off, and he signed on for several films at once, one of which was the comedy White Men Can't Jump. Although the movie's name is a well-known joke about white basketball players, filmmakers say that the shooting was much more fun. Because Woody Harrelson was a much better basketball player than Wesley Snipes, this movie could have featured Charlie Sheen, whose career had already given way. Still, he refused, saying he did not see himself as a basketball player, and Woody Harrelson took his place. White Men Can't Jump became a big hit at the US box office, grossing $74 million on a budget of only $8 million. Also in 1992, the action movie Passenger 57 hit the big screens, and again Snipes got a little lucky. It was long assumed that the film's central role would be Sylvester Stallone, but he eventually abandoned the project and chose Cliffhanger. The producers were very upset by that fact, and they immediately badly cut the budget and tried to get in his place Eddie Murphy, but the actor demanded a considerable fee for their participation. Frightened by Eddie Murphy's inquiries, the studio turned to Denzel Washington, but he refused, and it was only then that Wesley Snipes got the part. Passenger 57 was not a big hit, but like Jungle Fever, it paid off and made a small profit. Here Wesley had two flops, The Water Dance and Boiling Point, but since their total budget was less than one Passenger 57. In 1993, the actor starred in two box office hits again, Demolition Man and Rising Sun with Sean Connery. Demolition Man is a landmark film for the early 90s, and by a good tradition, he had to be very different. When the project just started to be developed, producers wanted to see in the leading roles not those actors who ended up there. The first choice of producer for the main part was Jean-Claude Van Damme, but because of the constant postponement of filming, the Belgian left the project. Sylvester Stallone joined the project and called Snipes, but the producers and the studio were against it, who was afraid that a black actor playing a mass murderer would cause an outcry in the press. But Sylvester and Snipes convinced the studio. For his role in the film, he received $4 million in just 2 years. Snipes' fee rose from $50,000 for Jungle Fever to $4 million for Demolition Man. Demolition Man was a good showing at the box office, grossing $159 million on a budget of $57 million, but the studio was hoping for more. Before the movie was even made, it was thought that the film would receive a sequel and a prequel. However, after such results at the box office, all the developments were pushed to the far shelf. Rising Sun also seems not to be a failure. At a budget of $40 million, tapes at the box office have mastered $107 million, but overall there is also present apparent shortfall. However, two Wesley career roles in these two films have played more likely positive. For his next film, Drop Zone, he got $7 million, a reasonably expensive film of $45 million. In Drop Zone, to star Steven Seagal, he requested a $12 million fee. When he was not satisfied, he left to work on the sequel, Under Siege, where he was offered $15 million. Wesley took over, and although the audience ratings are low, it is believed that the main blow to the sequel was the failure of Terminal Velocity, which hit theaters a couple of months before it. Originally, Drop Zone should have been released earlier. Still, because of poor test screenings, Paramount sent the picture to additional shooting, and its release was delayed from August of 1994 to December. And Terminal Velocity failed at the box office, and the audience went to see Time Cop with Van Damme and Terminal Velocity, completely unprepared, got into the Christmas holiday distribution where it was of no interest to anybody. In 1995, Wesley Snipes had another failure waiting for him. Money Train crashed. It was a vital film for Sony Studios and they spared no money on it. The film cost $68 million, for example. The following he'd cost $60 million, and Bad Boys only $19 million, and the massive, bank-breaking GoldenEye cost $80 million. The budget became so huge because of the most complex and expensive sets in the history of Hollywood. Initially, the movie wanted to shoot in an actual subway, but the creators faced many difficulties in preparation for filming. It was decided to build several subway tunnels at the studio in Los Angeles. From New York City were transported 12 subway cars were converted to run on propane. 4 insurance companies refused to cooperate with the film if the movement of vehicles needed to electrify the track. The picture was originally going to be directed by Tony Scott, but creative differences, the director left his seat and Joseph Rubin immediately ordered him to rewrite almost the entire script, because of which the film lost a lot of momentum. Many horror films like Mimic and Stigmata were later shot on the set built for this film. At the box office, Money Train was also very unlucky. It lost the competition to Bandiana and Ace Ventura. Also, Casino by Martin Scorsese and Toy Story started the same day. Money Train grossed just over $70 million at the worldwide box office on a budget of $68 million, making it one of the major flops of the year. After Money Train went down, The Fan was a film that seemed to be many people who wanted to be in it, but it was always going wrong. The same director, Tony Scott, twice refused offers to put the film. He explained his denial as straightforward. He did not like the script, absolutely no interest in baseball. He agreed to direct the picture only after the film crew joined Robert De Niro, with whom he really wanted to work. Baseball player John Kruk advised the team at the filming stage, then criticized Wesley Snipes and director Tony Scott. According to the baseball player, Snipes never learned how to swing a bat correctly. The director was incredibly distant from baseball, and therefore wasn't interested in any kind of realistic portrayal of anything to do with the game. And during the filming, Tony Scott fans signed on to direct Enemy of the State. Brad Pitt could play Snipes' role but declined the offer. In response, Pitt offered his candidacy for the role, which was later given to Robert De Niro, but the producers thought Brad too handsome for such a role. Initially, Wesley Snipes also wanted to play De Niro, but the studios convinced him that he would be more organic as a baseball star. At the box office, The Fan was a failure that managed to beat even the failed The Island of Dr. Moreau, which came out next to finally crush Tin Cup with Kevin Costner. With a budget of $55 million, The Fan failed to make even $20 million at the US box office. Then Snipes decided to play a police thriller. This thriller was Murder at 1600. After the rejection of Bruce Willis in the lead role, the film could be closed. The studio urgently began looking for a replacement, and settling on the candidacy of Wesley agreed to pay a record fee of $10 million. It can be said that the film was not very lucky with the timing of the release. If everything had gone as planned, and Bruce had starred, the movie would have been released in 1996, but because of all the delays it didn't hit the big screens until 1997. At a time when the market was already saturated with various political thrillers connected with the White House, and the audience was tired of them. The year 1998 also started sadly for Wesley. The US Marshals failed, the critics simply ruined the film, and Robert Downey Jr., who played one of the roles in it, considers it one of the worst films in the history of Hollywood. Perhaps this year will be the beginning of the end for Wesley, but at the end of 1998, he will be able to see Blade, which was a lifeline for the actor. Worried about his future, Wesley tried to get into all nuances associated with the film. According to Stephen Dorff, initially, they did not find common ground with Wesley. Dorff is a big fan of improvisation and reacted very rudely to outside advice. Snipes being the producer of the film, he felt it was his duty to give advice. Because of this, in the early stages of filming them, several clashes almost turned into a fight. But over time the actors got used to each other, and eventually they spoke warmly together. By the way, in one of the interviews, the screenwriter David Goyer said that the script was offered to director David Fincher. Fincher wanted to try his hand in another genre after the film Seven, but for reasons unknown to Goyer stopped collaborating and went on to other projects. The movie was predicted to be a box office flop. Analysts thought the audience would ignore a movie about a not-so-famous hero coming out just after Batman and Robin. However, Blade managed to knock Saving Private Ryan off the top of the US box office. With a budget of $45 million, Blade grossed $131 million in theaters worldwide. This result could not be called a big success, but the film also sold well on DVD. The studio immediately announced a sequel. During this period of his career, Wesley Snipes began to evade taxes, which would eventually lead him to prison in 2010. Although Blade saved the actor's career, Snipes did not choose a project more carefully. Instead, he signed up for movies that paid him more money. Among them were the works of the infamous franchise Pictures Studio, which was dragged through the courts for misuse of funds, after which she hastily went bankrupt. Interestingly, the studio's The Art of War may have been Wesley's last film except for the Blade series, which had some chances at the box office. But just because of various scandals and a huge budget that was not seen, the film lost its American distributor as Fox Studio and went to Warner, which didn't really advertise it, but dropped the film in cinemas there, which had a budget of $60 million and grossed $30 million. All Wesley Snipes' projects except Blade failed. By the mid-noughties, the actor began to participate in projects that went straight to video. Well, when Blade 3 failed in 2004, Snipes' stellar career was generally over. After a role in Chaos in 2005, which was still showing in cinemas, Wesley began to make movies that were the C category. He went to prison in late 2010, and although he was acquitted on some counts, the actor received 3 years in prison for tax evasion in the 1990s and early noughties. He was facing a much harsher sentence, and the guys who handled the actor's money went to jail for 10 years. Wesley was only given 3 years, of which he served 2. At the beginning of 2013, Wesley Snipes was released from prison and Sylvester Stallone called him into The Expendables 3, where Wesley got a major role, but positively on the actor's career this role has not affected, and return as such did not happen. After The Expendables, Snipes returned to action films of obscure category, whose rating on Profile Resources rarely reaches 4 points out of 10. Eddie Murphy often helped him in recent years, inviting him into his films for minor roles. One of them was a part of Coming to America, released immediately on streaming service. Instead, the actor could save when Wesley's career went downhill in the early noughties, cut his fees and tried to get better movies, but chose a different path, as did many before him.